Welcome to Press On Podcast with Mike Woodruff, where Mike and invited guests share insights to cultivate a biblical perspective and thoughtful resilience in challenging times.
Welcome back to the Press On Podcast. My name is Mike Woodruff, and today you have an opportunity to listen to an interview that I did at Mickey Finn's at the Forum. This is a men's gathering. Mickey Finn's is a sports bar, and I did this interview with Jason Brown. He's a friend. Jason is the he's the CEO of Marketplace Chaplains. Jason is a fascinating guy. He's got a great story, perfect sort of guest for us at some place like the Forum, because his backstory is that he was in the professional rodeo business. He was a world champion saddle bronc guy in 1991. He and his wife have twin boys who are in the competitive fishing space. They're going to college on bass fishing scholarships, and they're competing in Texas bass fishing. So that's sort of, that's a guy's sports bar kind of conversation. But then Jason also, for the last 20 years, has been working for Marketplace Chaplains. He was vice president in sort of sales, and now he's the CEO. The organization is growing quickly, and they provide Marketplace Chaplains. So this is sort of independent of HR, but it's a perfect conversation for us to have, because these chaplains are coming in to provide care for people in all the ways that life is eventually going to get hard. Difficulties with children, aging parents, addictions, whatever, cancer, whatever is going on. And then just in light of the fact that it's sort of rough out there, and there's a lack of resilience, there's a lot of people who are struggling with addictions and other things. And so this Marketplace Chaplains is a movement that is growing very quickly. So, had a fascinating interview with Jason. I think you'll enjoy it. Enjoy. Right now, I was supposed to ask you something and say, so a mutual friend sent me a text and said, ask him about how he was the rich kid at this school in Dallas and he got beat up by his classmates.
No, I wasn't the rich kid. I grew up on the wrong side of the
Grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, and you got beat up by your classmates.
Yes. Actually, it was pretty bad. I got told I was stupid. I would never make anything of myself. My teachers were on me every day. I got my lunch money stolen. I got beat up. And it was tough. But the worst part about it is I was homeschooled. So.
Yeah, okay. Okay. We're here all week, yes. Okay. So let's talk about the cowboy stuff for a little bit, because that is interesting. And so your nickname, Downtown Jason Brown, is because, as I understand it, you were from Dallas and you had not ridden a horse, and then you show up in high school, and your Dallas high school has a
rodeo team.
As a rodeo team. This is urban cowboy era. You want to be John Travolta, and you sign up, and the next thing you know, you're good. And you get a varsity letter in being on the rodeo.
The John Travolta part, I don't think was entered into it. But I was too little for football. I was burned out on golf. And a guy at our high school at Lake Highlands says, hey, come watch our rodeo team. And I go, Lake Highlands does not have a rodeo team. And he goes, yeah, we do. So you remember Urban Cowboy and Dallas, and everybody was wearing boots and all that. So I went out and I said, I'll try that. Never really ridden a horse. So I started out in bareback. I rode 6 times, flipped off the back, broke my collarbone. I said, oh, well, let me try saddle bronc, which is twice as hard because it's all about rhythm and timing. And the 3rd time I broke my wrist, but I wanted to just keep doing it. And so later on, when I was really good in the zone, I did it for a living for 4 years. People would say, so you have a ranch like JR, when I'd be interviewed all over, and they go, well, they didn't get it. And I said, okay, I was a rodeo athlete. I wasn't a cowboy. So does that help?
Yeah.
So I just learned how to do it because I wanted to do it so bad.
So you are a rodeo athlete through high school, and then you go to college, and are you rodeoing in college?
A little bit in the summer. So I went into the fraternity route and then wanted to get out of school. So finished my degree and then got the dream job in marketing with Procter & Gamble. And so did that for a while. And then after about 8 months, I was laying in bed going, oh, this is miserable. Going to a cold grocery store at 7 in the morning and getting thrown out by a store manager or the health and beauty aids lady that was packing shampoo. And so I finally said, 5 years from now, I could go get another job, a rep sales management job. But 5 years from now, I don't want to wake up and say, how far could you have taken your dream, Jason? So I sold my skis, I sold my car, sold a lot of stuff. I called my old friends in Oklahoma. I was in Dallas at the time. I had the dream territory. And they were bulldoggers out of Oklahoma. We rodeoed with about 14 guys in a truck. And I said, where are y'all going next? And they said, Huntsville, Alabama. And I said, enter me. So they said, okay, you're cracking back out. I said, yep. So I rode out there with them, paid my $100 entry fee, 40 in gas, 20 in food. And somehow it clicked again and won $800. So I remember going in the Von Braun Civic Center, had to get some quarters and put them in the telephone back when we had to do that. And I called and I said, well, Dad, I'm not at Procter & Gamble anymore. And he said, where are you? And I said, well, I just won $800 at Huntsville. And he says, well, he says, carpe diem. He says, if you're going to do it, go all out and do it right. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. So do we have a video of this?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Actually, let me set this up. So I used to rodeo all through here. We've been to all the county fairs, Kankakee, Grays Lake, Wakanda, Bensonville. I've rode in the Rosemont Horizon, University of Illinois at Chicago. All over running through that
Because
stuff.
when you were doing this is like a rodeo every day.
Oh, yeah, and twice on Saturday and Sunday during the summer. We'd go to a matinee in the afternoon and then run 3 hours down the road and catch a night rodeo, because the more you go to, the more money you win, and that determines your rankings.
And you were explaining this to me before, that if you're going to be a professional rodeo guy, you're either doing it for money, like just how much money you make, or you're doing it in order to
Win the title.
And you position yourself differently.
Right.
And so you wanted to win the title.
Correct.
So you're entering every day and then driving at night to go to the next rodeo.
Right. Yep.
Glamorous.
Oh, yeah. With 14 guys after about 8 days and 100-degree weather and 4 horses, it was a little smelly. And a truck stop with a hot dog or burrito, that was the high end of it. So.
And just to be clear, you are the 4 horses. These are not what you're going to ride.
No, these were bulldogging horses. So there was a bulldogging horse and a hazing horse. There was 2 sets of those. So every 4 hours, you got to let them out.
It's possible that somebody here doesn't know what a bulldogging horse is. I, of course, know, but I'll let you explain it to them.
So it's a timed event. They let out the steer, and a guy runs on a horse beside it, and there's another guy on the other side called the hazer that keeps the steer running straight. Otherwise, as this guy goes to jump off on him, the steer would just duck off. And so the bulldogger, or steer wrestling, reaches over and gets a lock on the horns, leaves his horse. Those horses have to then speed up and run past. They plant their feet in the dirt, stop the steer, shape him, and then grab the nose, and then they've got to get all 4 legs up in the air, and then that's the time, and the fastest times win the money in that event. So these are, back then those were $40,000, $50,000 horses. We were running up and down the road. So.
Okay. And so how many different rodeo events are there? Because you're doing, one guy said, when I said that you were a saddle bronc rider, he said that was the sissy guys because the real men went bareback.
Really?
He's back there if you want to talk with him.
Well, I know about 5 stock contractors in the area, and in a couple hours we can go out and load 2 in the chute. I'll tell you a funny story. We were in Homestead, Florida, the very tip of Florida, way down there. And so the weatherman came out, and he wanted to do the broadcast for the nightly news at the rodeo. And so the stock contractor and all said, sure, that'd be cool. And he said, okay, I want to sit on the horse. And it was a bareback horse. And he was doing it and talking about it. He says, hey, I've ridden a horse. I can do this. I want to open the chute and ride. And we go, no, you do not want to do this. And I mean, he weighed north of 220. He was not in shape. And so he said, and we were listening to the producers and the newscasters, and he says, all right, well, that's tonight's weather, and I'm out here at the rodeo, and I'm here on Buddy Bear, and we're going to watch me ride him. And he pulled his hat down and said, okay, open the chute. Well, the horse went 1-2, and he went about 10, 12 foot in the air, and he landed flat on his butt with his feet sticking out, and then rolled over and just conked out. And everybody at the news station was screaming, and is he okay? And he wasn't okay. So
Okay.
we tried to tell him.
Okay, so there's bareback.
Oh, there's
horse
7
riding.
events.
7 events. Okay.
There's 3 rough stock events: bareback, saddle bronc, and bull riding.
Okay.
You have to make the 8 seconds to get a score. Half the score is for the animal. That's where you get the term luck of the draw. And the other half is how good you rode or spurred.
But you have to stay on the bull or the horse for 8 seconds to get any kind of score.
Without double grabbing or bucking off.
Okay?
Then there's 4 timed events. 1 girls events, which is the cloverleaf barrel racing. And then there's 3 timed events: calf roping, steer wrestling, and bulldogging.
And is there like a decathlete who does all of them?
Yeah, it's called the all-around cowboy. You have to compete in 2 or more events.
And you competed in particular in the saddle bronc, and that's what you won your world championship in.
Right. We'll watch a video. The reason I sent these videos up, this was actually at the University of Illinois at Chicago, and they had school performances. And this was like in the morning, and this was actually a week before the finals. So there were so few riders, we had to get on 2 back to back, just to compete in the winner. Whoever had the highest 2 scores won the top 5 places. But because the finals were the next week, I told the stock contractor, run in another one, because I wanted to get tuned up before I went into the finals. So these are those rides in Chicago.
You just got 10 seconds, Jason.
Jason Brown, Dallas, Texas. International finals was called Ambush Shoot Number 1. Here we go. Also, some under 8 seconds later, our pickup men move in. Corey Zinger along with Benny Jordan. They're up there to help me put your hands together.
So let's watch Jason as he finished year number 3 in 1990, but now he's in the driver's seat, moving in for his first world championship. And this is a style that's brought him so far. Come on, Jason! Look at the charge he's making on that horse. And there, I thank you, St. Father, the next world champion saddlebrook rider, Jason.
What makes everything is just right? Of course, the biggest fear that he's accomplished is paying the foot to start. He don't let you in the
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Shoot gate number 1 for the action. In the lead in the saddle bronc riding.
See, it looks easy. It's for sissies, right? Yeah. But that's really a deal when you get up to that level. You can't make some weaker horses look too easy, or you won't get as high a score. So there's a lot of art and science to it. So
How many bones did you break over your career?
only 13.
13, okay.
Bad.
Yeah.
If you notice, we didn't wear vests and helmets back then. So in those chutes, those are made of steel oil fill pipe. And the worst place is getting on the horse in the chute or getting off. And so sometimes those horses, as soon as you sat down, would rear up backwards and then pin you against the back of the steel pipes and that. So sometimes if you know they have a tendency to do that, you put a rope around their neck and a guy holds them in, but sometimes you don't know and they just try to get an advantage on you.
And you did this because it was fun?
It was a challenge. So it took me 3 years to make the 8 seconds. They used to call me 3 Jump Jason because the chute gate would open and the horse would go 1, 2, 3, and I'd be off. And, you know, in God's providence, I don't know why, but he put me around some world champions that kind of took me under their wing. And I'd keep going out there in the summers and get beat up and not do very good. And they'd come back. My dad said, do I need to get him a bucking machine or what do we need to do? And Ronnie Williams was a Golden Gloves champ and a world champion bareback rider. And he said, well, Mr. Brown, the best thing I could tell you is you need to get him to quit or he's going to get hurt. And so I just wanted to keep doing it. And one day it clicked at a rodeo school in Michigan. I got on 4 in a row, and it was kind of like riding your bicycle. When your dad was helping you, all of a sudden you go, oh, I got it. So
at the level at which you are competing for the world championship, like you didn't show us anything where you were falling off.
Well, there's one picture we got to show.
You fell down once. Oh, yeah.
Now there's 2 universal truths about this picture. So what would one of them be? That there is gravity, right? Everything that goes up must come down. And there's one other thing. If you land like that, there is no way you will sprain your ankles.
That actually explains so much about you over the last few years that I've known you.
But the point is, you know, I probably went through 300 of those before I got to that other. Many people quit way too soon. And now there's all the science and study of the 10,000, the muscle memory. Because if you saw that, it's 8 seconds, but there's like $20 in that 8 seconds. You don't have, in our mental capacity, you can't ride those in the conscious mind you're in now. You ride in your subconscious. So.
Okay, so that's fascinating. And so one question is riding a horse, a bucking horse, harder or not as hard as riding a bull? Because the bulls, I see these guys getting on the bulls and I'm just like,
yeah,
okay, I think the odds that you're going to be alive in 5 seconds are really small.
Well, that's the main thing because there's not a pickup man for the bull riding. You have to
a clown
undo your
There's
dally.
a clown that's going to come out and help you.
A bullfighter, and hopefully, you've got under your dally. You've got to jump off. Now there's 3 things. Bulls are usually spinning, so it's hard to get out from under them. Number 2, some will try to freight train you. I've been run over by some. I rode a few bulls, and that's not fun. And 3, bulls have a cloven hoof. So when they land on your back or your leg, they do some damage. A horse is flat, and it'll hurt. But, I mean, Lane Frost got a horn in the ribs at Cheyenne and busted his spleen. I've watched 3 guys not make it out of the rodeo arena. So it looks easy, but it's our saying is in rodeo, it's not if you're going to get hurt, it's when and how bad. Now, this is a whole former life. I mean, I haven't talked about this in a long time.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm ready to move on.
No, I'm not saying that. It's just like, this is bringing back his memory.
Yeah.
You got a question?
Yeah. What is it that you do or in your mind when you get on that horse and you are out of the chute? What keeps you on it for the 8 seconds?
So what do you do when you're on the chute? How do you get out of your mind so that you're trying to do this as a skill? You're sort of subconsciously.
Yep. Yeah. So real quick, you can't overpower any of those animals. So it's not about strength. Most of the guys are short because you want a low center of gravity. In bull riding, you ride more with your knees than anything. In bareback riding, you have the handle and you're spurring up. In saddle bronc riding, we just have a rein and we're getting in time with the horse. Now to have that click, probably an hour before every rodeo, I went through the same routine. Took my bag and my saddle behind the chutes, undid everything, put my spurs on. I polished my boots. I did the same stretches. I did the same routine over and over. So the last year I won it, we went to 140 rodeos. I only bucked off 4 and I won or placed at 119 of them. So it was like I was in the zone. It was like Michael Jordan shooting free throws. You know, everything that nodded its head, it didn't matter if it was at the Pontiac Silverdome, Madison Square Garden, or a little county fair rodeo. Those horses don't know. They're going to buck. and you just have to prepare your mind and your body. So rodeo has this reputation, or part of it, but we were gone before the rodeo was over. We didn't stop by and drink beer and all that. All of us were trying to rodeo with world champions. So there's a lesson in that. You're only as good as the people you travel with. So you're only as good as the people you work with or bring on your team as well. So.
Yeah, that'll preach. Let's talk about your boys for a minute, because they are, I think we got a picture of them, and they are competing. They're in the top of the top in the U.S. in
collegiate bass fishing.
Collegiate bass fishing.
Yeah, show the other one. Let's see.
There's another picture?
Yeah, that's That's an 11-2 black bass caught last spring. Yeah, they fished at Saginaw Bay. They've been to Kentucky Lake. They go all over. That was at Bob Sandlin in East Texas. Yeah.
So
One more picture, the boat, yeah. And so that's their boat. They're sponsored. The ministry, I Am Second. Y'all have seen those videos of the guys in the white chair. That ministry is actually in the building where our ministry is in Dallas at the Hope Center, where there's 57 other ministries. So E3 and I Am Second is there, and it's pretty cool. But that's an 80-mile-an-hour bass boat. There's 4 Garmins on there. Yeah, they don't even let me ride in, and I can't use their rod and reels anymore. It's just, Dad, leave it, go away.
Yeah. So when I catch a fish, I mean, I always just assume that it's luck. Good luck for me, bad luck for the fish. I mean, it's a relatively random event.
No,
Clearly, at this level, they're consistently catching more and bigger fish than anyone else. How do you do that?
Science and art. It's like anything, your work, your faith life, your family, whatever you put into it. So when you get up to the levels, you think about golf. You know, you've got to be in the plus handicaps. At any one day now, on any pro tournament, there's 100 guys that can win. Every guy on the pro tournament can beat every club champion in America. So when you get up to those levels, it's the subtle differences. So they look at weather, they look at topography, the type of lake, the time of year, water temperatures, gradients, water clarity. They put about 20 rod and reels on the deck of the boat when they go fishing, because the different weights of lures, the type of lures, worms, different lines. You've got fluoro, mono, spinning reels for drop shots. So you've got to be able to adapt. And how long do you have for usually about 9 hours. So they're long days. You're up at 4. They fish from 6 to 3. Then at the fishing tournaments, it's your top 5. So if you can catch 5, if you catch your 6th one, then you throw back your smallest.
Because the fish have to be alive.
Correct, or you get a penalty. So that's another part of the art of it, is keeping them alive during the duration of the day. Yep, because they release them all. They're all catch and release tournaments.
Okay, so are they going to become professional bass fishermen?
Well, they kind of are now. They've won about 30,000 from tournaments, because it's not UIL or NCAA. And bass fishing in North Texas, there's about 6,000 high school kids fishing. There's over 4,000 college kids fishing now. It's booming, because during COVID, that sport got to continue on. They got to do that. So one of them, Parker, he's in marketing. He'll probably market and rep for a Mercury or a Line. He could do it. The other one, Leighton, is going to law school. So.
And you were, for a while, you were their speedboat driver.
Yeah, in high school, you don't want 16-year-olds running 80-mile-an-hour bass boats across a lake with 200 other boats. So in high school, you had to have a captain that drove the boat. But now they do it all on their own. Yep.
Okay, so let's back up. Your homeschool story aside, you grew up in Texas. When do you come to faith in Christ?
July 29th, 1973. I was driving with my dad, coming back from East Texas in his pickup truck, and he always had a Bible on the dashboard, and he just started telling me about it, and I said, what does it really mean to be a Christian? And he told me, and I said, well, I want to be a Christian, and he led me through the
Okay,
prayer, and I
prayer.
remember crying. And a few days later, he brought me my first Bible, and it had my name on it. And it said, "Presented to Jason, July 29th, 1973, by Dad." And that Bible I carried with me in my rigging bag to 4 years on the rodeo circuit. It was always in my rigging bag. So when I'd be asked to speak at schools or other events, I'd go through my Shaps and the Spurs, but then I would say, "Hey kids, do you know what the most important piece of equipment I have is?" And they go, "No, what?" And I'd pull out my Bible. I don't know if you saw, but every time I got off, I said a prayer. I just wanted to acknowledge God in front of all those and all those people. Excuse me.
Good. So now you are the CEO of Marketplace Chaplains.
Yep.
And you've been working with them for 20 years. You were in sales for a while, and now last year you became the CEO. Tell us about Marketplace Chaplains. You've got a couple thousand employees, and you do what?
Well, if you think about a chaplain, sports teams have chaplains, the military, hospitals, the U.S. Congress, police and fire departments, and now businesses. So we have 2,200 chaplains. They'll make 6,000 worksite visits this week in North America. We cover about 1.5 million employees and family members. We get a response call from an employee about every 2 minutes. We also get called when there's tragedies. So the Uvalde shootings, we had 13 chaplains down there for 5 weeks. There was a murder-suicide in a Chick-fil-A drive-thru the other day, and it's one we don't serve, so Chick-fil-A corporate called us to go help in that situation. A lot of the employees didn't even want to come to work the next day, so the chaplains were there. So chaplains are frontline caregivers. They're neutral from the company, somebody to talk to confidentially.
Neutral from the company, meaning if I talk to somebody in HR, there's some possible reporting
Correct.
that has to take place. But with a chaplain, that's not true.
Except if a life is in jeopardy, there's a direct threat or a law was being broken. But other than that, it's a neutral, safe, confidential place. So really the chaplains in the military were the basis of our ministry. It's 40 years old this year. I've been there 21 now. Our founder worked for Billy Graham in the 60s. Then he retired as a colonel in the Air Force and Army and said, "I wonder if what we did for our soldiers in uniform would work in the business world." And so in 1980, he started going around asking, and people go, "Oh, that sounds like a good idea. Who else is doing it?" And he'd say, "I want you to be the first." And they go, "Not me." But yeah, so
So
chaplains
it seems
are
like this would be like this is a legal landmine that you're going to come in with. The company is paying for somebody who represents a religious perspective, and they're going to force their religious views. So I know that's not what you're doing, but
Right.
but I understand the CEO of a company saying, "Yeah, we can't touch that."
It's more the general counsel or the CHRO might ask those questions, but not anymore. With the mental health crisis and the suicide rates and isolation and depression, we serve 13 public companies now. They're coming to us for all the mental health issues. So number one, it's our faith that allows us to do what we do, to go at 2 a.m. and meet a family. Y'all heard about the Allen shootings. Our CFO's wife taught one of those kids whose parents were shot. So anyway, it's not a religious program. We're not setting up Bible studies. We're not doing chapels. We're not passing out tracts. Chaplains will not preach, proselytize, promote a church, judge individual lifestyle or conduct. And people say, "Well, what do you focus on?" We focus on the commonalities everybody has. Stress at work, a rebellious teenager, care of aging parents, financial concerns, worry, anxiety, an addiction, whatever. And you know what? That's not atheist, Methodist, or Muslim. That's just a problem. We actually have 2 Muslim owners and several others of other faiths and many of non-faith that have brought us in just to help their people. So we help everybody. We meet people where they're at, and I'm just your chaplain here to care for you today because your company cares about you.
And is part of the sales cycle to suggest if you care for your employee, I don't want to be cynical here, but
Right.
but if you care for your employee, they're more likely to stay with you. They're more likely to show up at work if they feel that they're not just a cog in a machine. Somebody's paying attention to them, and they know that they've got stress with their aging parents or their kids, or that their spouse has cancer or something like that.
Yeah. So there's two things. Those in business know there's a war for talent. It's different than the war for talent 10 years ago to get real quality people. So one, it's an attraction tool. How do I bring the best people into my company? Well, this is a tangible way to show you care. Some of you may know about EAPs. They're those 800 numbers you can call a counselor. Those get about 2 to 6% usage. Just because who wants to call somebody they don't know? But we get about 60 to 70% usage way earlier on in the process. So before somebody commits suicide, files for divorce, files bankruptcy, decides to just walk off their job, that problem started 6 months back down the road. So if you could help somebody proactively, that's what you do it. So there's really 3 ROIs. Yeah, there's some companies that say, I want my people to be totally focused at work, so that's why I'm doing it. Yeah, there is business ROI. Dot Foods did a study, our decrease in presenteeism paid for the service itself. Retention, people leave because of their relationship with their direct supervisor. It's not money and benefits, and that they feel valued and cared for. Safety issues, safety breaches. We serve a lot of processing plants and a lot of drivers. Y'all know what drive time is? Or windshield time, welders and drivers. You get in the cab of your truck with a little problem from that fight that morning with your spouse, 80 miles down the road, it's this big and you're steaming mad, right? So we just provide a great pressure relief valve. As a frontline tangible person, real quick, we have more communication these days, but less relationships. And people have best friends and praying for you and all that, but when life really gets you down, who are you going to turn to and who can really provide you help? And so not only has our usage gone up, but the people that we've been seeing for years and years are now using us more and more at those companies.
So if I was a chaplain for ABC Widgets, I work for you. I'm a marketplace chaplain.
Now, that'd be tough for you to get on with us. So.
I'm not touching that. Okay, so whatever. So I'll just say that John here is a chaplain.
All right.
John is a chaplain for you, marketplace chaplain. So does he have theological training? Does he have counseling training? Is this through you're providing the training? Is this HR adjacent? I mean, what does John do if he wants to be
a chaplain,
one of your chaplains?
Yeah, and we use a team. We would have Chaplain Sally along with him. If there was 20 guys in the shop that spoke Spanish, we'd have a bilingual chaplain. So we speak 27 languages now. So you have to have a calling to vocational ministry, calling to the workforce. You have to have been in the workplace. You can't have just gone through church and seminary and been on that side of because you can't relate to the guy on the forklift, right? Most of them have degrees. Some have counseling degrees, but we don't do counseling. We stay in the chaplain role. So we're like triage out on the front, enemy lines, and guys that are dying, bleeding, scared. We help them. If they need longer term help, we get them to counseling. So many times now we're partnering with EAPs, handing off somebody to a long-term counselor that's qualified. But Chaplain John, he's going to show up at ABC Widgets every Tuesday morning. Chaplain Sally's going to go Wednesday afternoon. Well, those girls at that office know every Wednesday afternoon Chaplain Sally's coming by, and they really get to know that, hey, it's a regularly scheduled visit, and hey, they really do care. Maybe I'll test them out. So people always open up about a work problem. I didn't get a raise. Supervisor hates me. Yeah. And then just over time, it goes into personal things and then faith issues. So.
And you have. You said these numbers a second ago, but you are fielding about 1,500,000 interactions over or the 1.5 million employees that you're providing coverage over.
Employees and we cover the families too. So
okay.
Somebody's, grandmother, let's say if your grandmother was in a senior living home in Scottsdale and she failed today, and the admin person and the nurse said, oh, she's fine, but you're worried about her. Well, you could tell Chaplain John, hey, my grandmother's in Scottsdale at this senior living community, and I'm worried about her. Well, Chaplain John's going to call one of our field reps. We're going to have a female chaplain go visit that person's grandmother within about an hour.
Okay, great.
Yep.
So you've been doing this for 20 years, 25 years in working for Marketplace Chaplains. And the company has grown pretty dramatically during those last 20 years. How else has the company changed, or how has what you're doing changed, or how have the problems that you are seeing changed?
Yeah, a lot. So much so, our last training in the last 2 weeks, we had to develop, because I brought on a Green Beret who wrote all the training for SOCOM, Special Operations Command, and our chief of chaplains is a brigadier general. He was the chaplain to the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the Pentagon. So do you know what we had to do our training on? 2 weeks ago, we had to rearrange our schedule because this was happening so much across America with employees and their chaplain. So Chaplain John comes to me and says, "Hey, Jason, are you doing all right? Anything your chaplain can do for you today?" And I said, "Well, John, today my name is Jenny, and you need to call me she, and I want to speak to the female chaplain." That's what we're dealing with. So there's 22 states with SOGI laws, and hey, we are invited guests. I don't know if y'all kind of get the winds, but we're living in a post-Christian America, so we're really missionaries on a foreign land these days. So you have to, how do you be a good missionary? You learn the language, the culture, the customs. We go where people are and meet them where they're at. And you know what? When that, whatever couple or that people that identify with this faith or no faith, when their kid's in a car wreck or there's a problem, we're going to be there and treat everybody just as Jesus would unconditionally.
So how, there's a lot has been written, and really the number of books that have come out in the last year, and some of these books are now coming out. Brookings Institute came out with a book, so that's sort of a left-leaning think tank. And they came out with a book on, I can't remember, I think it was on Boys and Men is the title of it, and the author was told, you can't publish this, and it was just saying, okay, men are failing. Men in particular are failing. Men have their own unique problems. We're seeing dramatic decline in the number of men going to college or staying in the workplace or whatever. And so there is this recognition. And when we were doing men's fraternity, I used to have this statistic that I used to start every year and say, okay, 70% of suicides are men, and 96% of drunk drivers are men, and 99% of rapes are men, and 98% of murders are committed by men. And it's like, guys, we're, wow, we're not doing as well as women are. So women have their own challenges and their own issues, but this is a room full of men. What are the challenges that you're seeing as the CEO of a Marketplace Chaplains? What are the different kinds of resilience challenges or whatever, life skill challenges? I'm not sure what I'm asking, but are you seeing that?
Yeah, and so real quick, to communicate, we had to develop an app, because that's what all these young kids, Gen Zs and millennials talk on. And then COVID,
those youngsters under the age of what, 50?
Yeah, somewhere in there. And then, COVID was a blessing because a month after it, everybody got on FaceTime. Well, we used a software company we serve in California, and I called him and I said, "John, how do I integrate FaceTime into our app?" He goes, "I don't know, I'll figure it out." So we were finding ways to connect with people where they were. The challenges today is there's so much information and so much wrong information that seems like the truth that you can't control what your family or your children are seeing. And it's off just, it sounds really good and it's off this much, but 1 degree off of true north after 1,000 miles, you're going to be 400 miles off course, right? And so there's the resilience part is that, they're tougher than you think. And there is hope. Here's the good thing about the newer generation. They could care less about the house with a white picket fence and a lake house and an SUV and a boat and all this stuff, right? They don't want that. They want lives of significance. They want to know that they matter. And if that means living in a little box with 4 people, that's fine. They're also more open spiritually than anybody has ever been before, because let's face it, in the 50s through the 70s, we had this thing. We had our family life on Saturday, our church life on Sunday, then Monday morning you had to go back and be the business guy, right? And that was a duality. It was a real problem. And John Beckett wrote a book in the 80s called Loving Monday. And so there's this whole integration of faith at work. Well, yeah, that's good, but you know what? Your faith is kin to your beliefs, and your beliefs determine your values, and your values determine your actions. And so those lines aren't as progressive as they were. There's things that interact and interchange. And then there's so much rebuttal against, if you want to stand up, here's the problem, and this has been a problem in the church. We've made a lot of converts and a lot of fun stuff, but no disciples. Most Christians today cannot defend their faith adequately against past the second question. And so our kids, they're resilient and they try, but then if they rebut, they're called bigots, they're haters. You know, you almost can't win in a debate anymore. So people just give up because they want to be liked, right? And that's where the isolation road, the depression road, I mean, we're seeing the suicides not only increase, but the younger kids. I mean, we have 11 and 12-year-olds. In 3 clicks, they can learn how to commit suicide painlessly. And
So let me launch off of that for a second. So I don't know, 100 guys here. A number of them, let's just say they're not going through the challenges themselves at this moment. I mean, obviously everyone is, but let's just look at these guys as 100 guys that are going to go be talking with somebody at work tomorrow.
Yep.
And somebody at work tomorrow is struggling, or it's their neighbor, or it's let's not go with the son or spouse. There's a level of complexity that goes there. But somebody in their small group, another dad in a helping coach a little league team, whatever. Somebody says, you go, how you doing? And they go, yeah, I'm doing fine. You
Fine.
go, really? Well, that was a long time to get to fine. So. Or you just know, your employee or your employee or your friend is going to get fired, or they're about to go declare bankruptcy, or they're in bankruptcy, or whatever it is. They're going through a divorce. What are the things that you would coach? What is chaplaincy 101? What are the first 2 or 3 rules that you can give to them so that they are not Job's friends and get dinged? Although Job's friends didn't say anything for like a week. They just sat there and sat with Job, and then, which I'm like, wow.
that's pretty
That's
good.
showing up.
Yeah.
I would think if I had been there for a couple hours, I'd earned the right to say something. But I mean, they were there a long time. They don't say anything. And then they start to say things, and it's the wrong thing. So what's the right thing to say, or how would you coach them to be a better friend to somebody in stress?
Yeah. So let's start at the 100,000 foot level and come down. You know, the parable of the Good Samaritan. A parable is not a true story. It's a story to illustrate a spiritual truth. So Jesus talked about the guy that was beat up and on the road, and the next day a priest walked by, and then a Levi, and then a Samaritan. Well, Samaritans and Jews hated each other because Jesus had been asked, who is my brother? Who is my neighbor? And so, it was the Samaritan that helped him and bandaged him up and all that. And so Jesus said, well, that was your neighbor. So I think number one is, are we willing and open to be God's hand and feet in the world's largest mission field, the workplace? There was 130 million non-governmental employees that went to work this morning. And they all came with struggles. We serve other ministries and nonprofits, and the problems and issues are the same there as they are at ABC Widgets. And so number one is show up. You said a little bit about it. We call that ministry of presence. People don't want to know how much you know until you show them how much you care. And most people really aren't looking for an answer. It goes back to listening, and not just listening, but listening to understand. And how many times are we listening with the answer running, and we're thinking about that text we need to respond to, and I really need to go over there and see Steve. And so, what'd you say, Mike? Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, give me a call next week. Here's step 3 or 4, wherever we're at. If you believe tomorrow that when you show up that somebody on either office, cubicle, work line, and another truck on the other end of the line, on the other end of the Teams call or the Zoom call, if you think there's somebody that isn't okay, if you will pray for a divine appointment, if you will pray to be sensitive to where God wants to lead you to help somebody, because he could fix the problem, but he chooses not to. He wants to involve us. Iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. So if you just show up and be available and listen and ask questions, well, tell me more about that. And seek to really understand where somebody's coming from. See, many people want to attack the presenting issue. Things aren't going good at work with my supervisor. Well, you drill down to the root of the problem, and this is a true story. It was at a McDonald's, and the guy said, the chaplain said, well, what time's your shift? And he said, 8 to 2. When do you show up? Right at 8 o'clock. I got to take my daughter to drop her off. My wife has to work early. And so the chaplain gave him some advice. He worked out a schedule. He said, you show up at 7:45 dressed with your apron on, ready and on the line. Well, 2 weeks later, chaplain, I got a raise and a promotion. The guy loves me. So sometimes it's common sense things, but most people are not being heard these days. That's why these kids are so wrapped up in likes and social media. And that's why so many people, their whole identity is wrapped up in what other people think about me. And so it goes back to whose you are and who is your audience.
So I hear you saying a couple of things. Show up.
Yep.
Somebody's hurting, you show up. I hear if you think somebody's hurting, you're praying for a divine opportunity.
Yep.
And then you're asking questions, seeking to really listen and figure out what's the core issue here.
Yep.
And then anything else that you would?
And then I would say, is there anything I could do for you? Don't offer advice or say, oh, that's easy. Hey guys, we're all A-type, high D. We fix things all day long. You got to flip that switch off, or it just passes on as another conversation, and by 7 that night, it was forgotten about.
I may have learned that, like 4 years or so into marriage, that the question wasn't what could have been done or should have been done. That was not advice that
It's not about
anyone
the
was
nail
interested
the
in.
head.
Right. It was
Yeah.
just, I'm sorry, that sounds bad. Like, I understand. That sounds like a bad day. And that was like, well, I can say that all the time. I mean, I got good advice to offer. If you would have done this, you would have fixed the problem. Yeah. I realized at some point that was not actually well received.
Here's the last cream. Here's the last cherry on top of it. I just thought of this one. You need to be real with that other person and transparent. I've been through that before. Well, here I'm really struggling to here. Maybe we could help each other. People aren't looking for experts. They just want somebody to walk with them when life gets tough.
Okay, so we are bumping up against an hour, so I'm going to go to the final 4, and then we'll open it up afterwards. If you got questions or you want to hire a marketplace chaplain, you can come up and talk with Jason afterwards. But the final 4 questions. What are you reading right now?
My devotional is Oswald Chambers, My Utmost for His Highest.
Okay.
And the main thing is people say, oh, I'm called to do this and called to do that and all that. No, we're called to Christ to be wholly identified with Him, and then everything outflows of that. We try to rearrange the equations and fit God and faith and all this into the things we want to do, but that's backwards.
Okay. What book or podcast or movie or article or anything have you been recommending the most in the last year?
I'll be honest, I'm not a big reader. I listen and observe. I get sent a lot of books. I get asked to write forwards in books and to read some outlines. Here's what I would say. We're in the information age. There's too much information out there, right? So pick something that you feel like, do a real self-assessment of what am I weakest in? Communication, leadership, whatever it is, find an author you like or find a subject matter and go deep there. Don't try to read 80 books or 80 executive summaries, that doesn't work for me. So I would go deep in a couple of things where you know you're the weakest and you really need help. Now, so when here's what I had to do. This is what gets people over the humps. So when I couldn't get to 8 seconds and I had a issue of finishing, right? That was my gap. The gap is the difference between what's happening and what you want to happen. So what I started doing is if I was doing 50 push-ups, I'd do 55. Back then, I had a 28-inch waist. If I ate one hamburger, I'd eat 2. I went over and above in everything I did, programming my mind to finish. And what do runners do on track? They don't run to the finish line. They run where? Through the finish line, right? And so,
Okay.
all right.
Is there something right now that you in particular are working on? And it doesn't sound like but oftentimes it's the next book someone is writing. It could be the next project you have for your company. You're expanding in this direction.
Yeah.
You're spending your time thinking about X.
Yeah, the world is really flat. And so when we serve companies like Cargill and Intel, you know, we've had chaplains in England. We've started some things in South Africa and Malaysia and South Korea, but they're so different. The cultures are so different, but we're going to be forced to go further international. But here at home, we're probably in our 3rd stage of growth. And so we're going through a complete analysis and restructure of our field structure to be able to handle the complex world and what CEOs and CFOs and HRs are asking us every day. And we've got to get better in our training and continuing education because the chaplains are running more and more into stuff. We don't have as much gray area to operate. So it's continual improvement all the time. So real quick, on the rodeo circuit, I carried around the camera and I'd have somebody film me. That's how I have those. Even if I won first place, I would go back and watch that ride 4 or 5 times and find 1 or 2 things that I didn't do as good as I should have. Now, that may be OCD or perfectionist, but that ride at that rodeo that won first, that might have won 8th at a different rodeo. If I would have fixed those 2 things, I could have won 2nd or 3rd at that other rodeo. So you have to be in continual improvement.
Okay.
All right.
Let's give a hand to Jason.